Setbacks are temporary, but comebacks, they are legendary. Welcome back to the PSI Effect, where we pause, shift, and ignite purpose that speaks louder than your past. This is Neug, and together with Franky, we're your hosts in this space, and your comeback starts now.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the PSI Effect Podcast. And we are glad to see you here in this space. We have a very good conversation for you on deck. We're going to be talking about you're not behind, because I know sometimes people feel like they are behind where they think they should be in life. And we're going to be talking through some of that. But before we get into it, I just want to invite all of our listeners and our newcomers to the space to go out there and make sure that you like and follow us on whatever platform you are watching us from. Go to all the socials because we are there, and we certainly appreciate your like and follow. It helps the algorithms and helps folks to find us. And hopefully we have some newcomers that come and get some really good golden nuggets that we have to drop for you. So go ahead and do that. That is your pre-homework. We might have a little something for you there at the end. Before we jump totally in, Franky, how are you, brother? What's going on?
What's up, Neug? Good to be back in the space as always. And, today I'm just kind of full. I'm not full as in I've been, hitting the buffet, although that does sound like an amazing idea right now. I am a little hungry.
It does indeed.
Whew. But hey, like the holiday episode, if you go into the buffet, you got to wear your stretchy pants if you want to survive. But this fullness that I'm feeling today is really a sense of gratitude. Lots of exciting stuff going on in my life right now, and one of the things that's most exciting, we just had senior night for my oldest son and his varsity basketball team, and man, was that an experience! It was emotional. It was exciting. I'm filled with pride, seeing the accomplishments that he's been able to kind of stack up, and then also to seeing him realize the progress that he's made compared to where he had wanted to be. And I got all retrospective and introspective, and it's like, well, how have I been progressing as a dad, as a husband, and just a lot of reflection. But I'm just really grateful for where I am right now. Grateful for how my sons are doing, how my wife is doing. It's just full of gratitude today.
Awesome. Gratitude is a beautiful thing. Absolutely a beautiful thing. Well, you mentioned something. You talked about taking an inventory of how you were doing as a dad, which is a good segue into what we're talking about today. And, I have this feeling that some folks in our audience think sometimes or have their own feeling that they may be behind in life. They look around and they see other people and what they're doing compared to what, is going on in their own life, and they feel a little behind, right? They feel a little, maybe even inadequate at times because they feel like they should be further along than what they really are.
It's all in the eye of the beholder, right? It's easy for us to get kind of caught up in all the goals that we've set for ourselves, because I hope that everybody has at least one goal that they're moving towards, or an idea of what they'd like their future state to look like. And inevitably, we don't get there as fast as we would like to. I mean, even if I got somewhere to achieve the goal tomorrow, it wouldn't have been fast enough. Like, why did it take that long? Especially when you think about how in our current climate, our current kind of cultural norms, it's very much a instant gratification type of environment where things are at your fingertips. There's so much at our fingertips right now. Like, I could go on a phone that I carry in my pocket and find out any information from anywhere on the planet that I want to within seconds. Whereas back in the day, I had a set of encyclopedias that my parents bought from an encyclopedia salesman that went door to door. And those encyclopedias sat on my shelf and helped me do my, papers and stuff back when I was in, elementary school, middle school. But now it's with this whole instant access to information age that we live in. I think it's kind of also impacted our view of how we make progress towards our goals.
Yeah, you mentioned you mentioned the encyclopedia. We didn't have encyclopedia at our house. We had to go to the library, and that's and I think today that's a novel idea. But yeah, so this feeling of feeling like you're behind, that crosses many aspects of our life, right? In our career, you mentioned family, other relationships, fitness, I'm sure is one of them because
Oh, yes.
talk about instant gratification. If I want to lose 20 pounds, I want to look at that 20 pounds in the rearview mirror tomorrow, right?
Hmm.
And sometimes it just doesn't happen that way. Um, and so, we get into this space where we're comparing ourselves to other people and how they are advancing in their lives. And so when we think about that, um, that can bring on, as we've talked about in some of our previous episodes, anxiety, right? And a lot of other mental health, stress, those kinds of things, other types of mental health issues. And so, let's just talk about that from a pause standpoint in the whole pause, shift, and ignite framework. Um, how should folks approach this whole feeling like they're behind aspect of their life when it relates or as it relates to the pause?
Well, when we're in the pause phase, we're introspective. We're taking some time to reflect and kind of take in what's going on around us. And for me in the pause, when I'm making this type of assessment, the first thing I want to make sure I do is that I have a clear view of what the objective is. Like, all right, where is it that I'm actually trying to go? Because I can't really measure how far along I am on my journey if I don't have a clear view of my destination. So knowing my destination along the path is the first piece of information that I need before I can start taking assessments of how far I've progressed. Because if we don't know where we're going, we could just go in circles and run ourselves ragged, doing the same thing over and over again, thinking we're going to make progress, but we're just, wasting energy.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that. And I just want to say to the audience, sometimes you may not have a feeling that what's going on. I mean, if you have this, I guess for me, when I think about sometimes when I had that feeling, I just felt like restless, right? Like something inside it just wasn't right, and when you have that feeling, and I guess, maybe you don't, but if you have it enough, or if you have that feeling that comes up for other issues in your life, um, you just know something's not right, right? And usually, at least for me, when I have that feeling, that means there's a change coming.
Mhm.
Right? Something is about to happen, and maybe it's a breakthrough in a relationship, maybe it's a breakthrough in a career, maybe it's just some sort of a breakthrough that is coming. Maybe maybe I'm going to be enlightened somehow. But it's just that whole restless feeling that you get, and you just can't sometimes put your finger on it. And then once you take that pause and go through some of the processes that you just mentioned, then you can kind of identify, well, yeah, maybe that's what's going on here. Um, but I think it's very easy to miss because there's so many things happening every day in your life, so many things vying for your attention that
Hmm.
you don't take time sometimes to just think about you and what what it all means for you, or what that restlessness means for you, right? You're outgrowing something, maybe, right?
Hmm.
Maybe you've reached the end of a growth period in that particular area of your life, and you're you have a growth spurt into something else. So yeah, there's a lot that can come up that I think people may miss because there's just so much happening in life.
So that comment that you made about that feeling and knowing that a change is coming, that's definitely a very mature and very wise view of it. And that sounds like something that takes time to develop, to even make that correlation between this feeling of unease, this feeling of restlessness, and the potential transition point that we're about to get to. I think it might be hard to interpret when you're first encountering it in your journey. So it's definitely one of those things where repetition counts. The more we encounter it and the more we intentionally take that time to pause, the more likely it is we're going to connect the dots and be like, oh, I'm feeling this way because of this. And we're able to make that proper correlation. And you mentioned about we may just be coming out of a growth spurt and getting ready to go into something new. That reminds me of, something I hear in church. We say in church all the time. It's like, you're either about to go into a storm, you're in a storm, or you're coming out of a storm, and for us in our lives, it's not just storms all the time, but we go through these different transitions, these different seasons, these different phases. And the feeling that we have could be, is like you mentioned, we're just in that buffer space between phases.
Yeah, I think about, kids, and as they grow, they have these growth spurts, right? They're kind of clumsy, right? When they go to the next level, if you will, when they go to the next step. And, we as adults, we don't always think about that, right? When you grow out of something, you're growing into something that could be a very clumsy, if you will, space to be in. And we just need to, give that some thought. And as you mentioned, sometimes we don't recognize, but I kind of liken it to when you aren't feeling well, you have a cold or a flu, you start coughing and you think, oh, that feeling I have is a cold, it's a flu or something like that, right? And this restless feeling is kind of the same thing, but we kind of don't pay that much attention. Um, I think we just kind of push that to the side if we're not being introspective of how we feel and what's going on in our life. If we're not taking that inventory of our life, we can just push that to the side and it can get totally missed. So,
well, you got to think about what's the default mode for a lot of folks. I don't have time for this. I got to press through. I got this stuff that's got to get done. I just got to endure. I got to suck it up and go. And as admirable as that may be, in the short term for getting things done, and whether it's doing your job, taking care of somebody in a relationship, taking care of a family, raising your children, if we're consistently pushing aside the effort that we should be expending with that introspection, it's going to catch up with us eventually and manifest in those negative ways that you mentioned at the top of the conversation.
yeah, I believe that's true. And so as we think about that, we go through all of these personal gymnastics to figure out kind of what's going on. Sometimes we have to recognize that we're at a point in our life where we have to let go of something in order to receive what's coming at us. And I think, sometimes we're hoarders. We don't like to we don't like to think about that, in the emotional sense. We think about it in the tangible sense, certainly things around the house or what have you. But we can be hoarders of things that make us comfortable, that keep us in that comfortable space. And I think that can keep us from growing into what we're meant to grow into at that particular time.
That's a powerful analogy. If you just keep it in the physical sense of being a hoarder, we've seen that show where somebody may be hoarding things, and you said hoarding things that make us comfortable. And if we just look at it through the lens of, the physical space, what ends up happening is that, the parts of these people's homes just get overtaken and there's no space for them to live their life anymore. So if we extrapolate that out to, the emotional baggage that we may be carrying, or, spiritual baggage that we may be carrying and hoarding, it's the same sort of effect. The more and more we hold on to that stuff, the less room we're leaving for us to effectively live our lives.
Yeah, and if you don't let go of those things that are really not good for you anymore, right? Then I don't think that you can effectively move into what's next, what the good thing is that's next, right? Whatever that is, whether it's in career, family, relationship, whatever it is, sometimes you just really have to let go.
Yeah. So letting those things go, and you mentioned bringing things, allowing for new things to come in. Well, having new things come into our lives requires space. And if we don't have space, how can those things come in? Like one of the examples that I jumped to immediately was thinking about somebody who's like super career focused. I'm gonna put in all these hours at work. I'm doing all these things. Even when I get home, I'm still working and things like that. But I don't have a love life. I don't have a significant other. Well, you're gonna have to let go of some things to make space to be able to have that person in your life. Or you mentioned, I want to lose this weight. I want this 20 pounds in the rearview mirror, immediately. But if you want to let go of that weight, guess what? You got to make space for changing habits, for physical activity, for better dietary choices. So yeah, we do have to let go of those things. And one of the reasons I'm still festively plump is because I can't let go of double stuffed golden Oreos and Cool Ranch Doritos.
Oh my goodness. Let's not even go there, man. Because I tell you, there are some snacks that just make me weak, and so let's not even do that. And so, but it does make me think of, when you talk about losing weight, you talk about eating differently, making better choices in your diet and exercise and that. Um, I mean, that's not very attractive stuff. If you do the work, it may not look like it's impressive to you at the moment, but over time, you'll see that weight come off. You'll feel better. So it doesn't mean that because you can't see it right now that nothing is happening. It's just that you got to be patient sometimes with
Phew.
the process. You have to be patient with the process. And part of that is also letting go, right? And I mentioned the
Mhm.
snack. So if I really want to see results in my exercise regimen, in my efforts in dieting, I need to let go of some snacks. Plain and simple, right?
Yeah.
I can't achieve my goals in the health arena if I don't give something, like double stuffed Oreos up.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to something that we've touched on in prior episodes. When we say yes to something, we are intrinsically saying no to something else. If I'm saying yes
Mhm.
to those double stuffed Oreos and Doritos and, heaven forbid, a Mountain Dew, I'm definitely saying no to seeing my abs by summertime. Right. So it becomes a dance of priority. And this also leans back to our conversations around habits where, we can't just rely on willpower. We got to have systems in place to kind of help us stay on path to achieve these objectives. And like you alluded to earlier, that means we're going to have to let go of some things. We can't carry it all forward because, even the world's strongest person can't carry everything.
Willpower. I have willpower, Frankie. I cannot let go of the double stuffed Oreo. It is willpower to not let it go.
No, no, it's just that you're not a quitter. You're not a quitter. That's what that is. You're not a quitter. Oh man.
Oh,
I like just a few minutes ago you mentioned something, you made an analogy about, kids growing, and sometimes they grow really
mhm.
fast, and when they grow really fast they get, they kind of move a little awkwardly until they learn their bodies again. I distinctly remember as a child, my feet would grow really fast. And
Mm.
you could talk to my parents and they would tell you that they felt like they were buying me a new pair of shoes every 3 months because I had some big Sasquatch feet that they needed to put shoes on. And I remember the feeling of discomfort when it was time for a new shoe. I'd try to put my shoe,
Mhm.
shoe I've been wearing just fine. Favorite shoe, love it, wear it all the time. But then I put my foot in and then I finally realized this doesn't feel good anymore. And, you fast forward to becoming an adult. And as adults, we're not growing in that same way physically anymore. So we don't have that same physical reminder that young folks have, that growth and transition is happening, like your body changing. I distinctly remember feeling growing pains, my bones aching because they were growing and things when I was younger. But as adults, as we get older, we forget what growth feels like physically. And I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I think that manifests in growth broadly speaking. We forget what growth feels like, and it becomes a little more difficult for us.
I think you're right. I think we forget what it feels like. And I think sometimes growth scares us.
Mhm.
I think it frightens us sometimes because that next step, again, we're comfortable sometimes where we are. We're hoarding those things that keep us comfortable. And that growth into the next phase of a situation or the next phase of a life can be scary. And so, yeah, I don't want to think about that because I'm comfortable right now. I like what's happening right now. That growth feels very uncomfortable, and never mind the fact that I've already had this feeling that I'm behind, but have this internal struggle with the growth because I'm afraid to go to the next level.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I really want to dig into, how do we get stuck in this trap? Where does this feeling of thinking that we're behind come from? What are the things that are contributing to this feeling for us? We could be making progress, but what is it that's making us feel like we're behind?
I really think a lot of it has to do with comparisons. We compare ourselves to other people in their situations. And, especially if, I went to a 4-year college, you went to a 4-year college, and, I'm still working for, little to no money and no advancement. And then here you are. I mean, you've already gotten 3 or 4 promotions in your work and so forth. And so I think those kinds of things impact our thought process for where we are. And that comparison that we are behind. And, I think that if we can just take an inventory of our life and appreciate some of the positive things that we have already accomplished, that we can see that, you know what, maybe I'm not as behind as I think. Sure, I haven't had the promotions that Frankie has had. However, I have, A, B, and C that I can truly be proud of. And so I think that that's part of it. I also think that sometimes what we do is we look at our situation and, we just try to compare apples to apples. And it's not always that way.
Right.
Just the pathways that people take in their life, those opportunities or those pathways weren't there for us, or we chose differently, or any number of things. And so I think being comfortable, or trying to be comfortable in your own skin, in your own atmosphere, if you will, is going to be helpful, because I can't compare myself to, um, I mean, pick any athlete, like, Shaq. I mean, first of all, Shaq got me by probably 3 feet.
You're not quite that short, Neug.
But I'm just saying, so you got to keep things in context when you're looking at where you are in your current state.
Yeah, I agree that what we choose for the standard for comparison, this is the standard against which I am measuring myself. I think it is one of the most pivotal things that we need to really put some thought to during the pause and the shift, just to make sure that what we're specifying as our measuring stick, for lack of a better term, is appropriate, and that we're taking everything into consideration, right? Because it's really easy to overlook and diminish better when you're looking for perfection. And I think that's how we get into a trap sometime, where we overlook and devalue the improvement we've made, we overlook and devalue the better because we're looking at this picture of perfection. And we need to make sure that that's even an attainable thing, that we can even, get to that perfection. Everybody, we put in a sports analogy. Everybody wants to hit the game-winning shot. Everybody wants to hit a home run. Everybody wants to score a perfect 10 or win the race. But life is not a finite game like that, where there's like a beginning and the end. And, at the end of the game, this is the score and you won or you're not. It's kind of an infinite thing. You can't win life. There's no rule book that says, oh yes, you win life. No, you make progress while you have time. And getting caught up by chasing a picture of perfection sometimes can cause us to fall into that trap of undervaluing the progress that we've made.
And that picture of progress, I just want to remind everybody, is that is a picture that you painted for yourself, right? That is a self-made or a self-portrait. It's not everybody's picture, right? Your identity with perfection is yours and yours alone. It's not going to match mine. It's not going to match Frankie's. It's not going to match anybody's. That's your picture of perfection. That's your standard of perfection. And, I'm not going to say that you're not going to attain that, because certainly everything is possible. But I think the one thing that you have to really look at is that picture is something that you determined for you. It's not something that someone determined for you. Sure, you can say that somebody or some situation created this ideal of perfection for you, but at the end of the day, you're the one that decides what is perfection in your life and what's not, right? You make the choices for you.
Yeah, I mean, we're inundated with things that try to capture our attention. We look at social media, we look at, the Super Bowl commercials and all this other stuff that is trying to influence our mindset and our vision of what happiness and perfection look like. But I like how you brought that all together, Neug, because at the end of the day, that has to be an internal conversation and decision that you make, that you set for yourself, rather than relying on an arbitrary line in the sand drawn by somebody showing only the best parts of their life on social media, or some company trying to upsell you on this idea of what happiness and perfection look like. Because, you have to think about it when you're making that comparisons, like, Neug, you mentioned us comparing ourselves to one another. While we may be comparing one particular aspect of our lives, if we were to say compare, careers, yes, careers are one part of our lives, but all of the other pieces of our lives have contributed to where we are on that path. So trying to just isolate the career piece of what we're doing doesn't really work, because there's so many other factors to consider that got people to where they are. So we need to make sure that we're making fair comparisons for ourselves.
Yeah, and also, Frankie, I think something important to mention is, while you're in this space, in this state of feeling like you're behind, you could actually be in a situation where that season of your life is shaping you for what's coming next, right? So just because I didn't get the 2 or 3 or 4 promotions like you got, there's something coming for me, and I am being prepared, if you will, for what's coming. And if I allow that to happen in my life, if I get rid of what's holding me back, if I turn my life around and stop hoarding, if you will, then I open myself up for what's coming next. And so that could be the season that you're in, just could be a state where you are still preparing for what the next good thing is in your life, the next step in your life, the next achievement in your life.
We're talking about transitions, and time is filled with swift transitions. And you think about a transition in the physical sense, like you're walking around your house, you're going from from the kitchen to a bedroom or something like that, or some other room. and it transitions from being, laminate flooring or tile or hardwood to carpet.
Mhm.
I can't tell you how many times in my own house, having lived in that house for 20 years, that I would like catch my foot funny or, on those transitions, and it would cause me to trip up a little bit. And that's just the mental image that I'm getting as we're talking about this. We're talking about transitioning from one state of being to another, so from one part of our lives to another. And in those transitions, I think about what a transition is. It's where two pieces are coming together, and sometimes that connection isn't smooth. Sometimes that connection can trip you up.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess, one of the things I like to say for our audience is to go back to what you said in the beginning, Frankie, is have a little introspection and to maybe take an inventory of what really doesn't fit in your life anymore, especially if you're having that real uneasy feeling and you just can't really put your finger on it. It could very well be you're growing into something else and you may need to let go of some things in your life. And so taking that inventory, having those moments of reflection and introspection, I think can help you to determine if there is something in your life that you need to remove, set aside. It's not necessarily something that you do have to remove. It may not be that at all. But giving yourself some time to do that kind of work, I think puts you in a position to at least identify what's going on.
Yeah, and this ties in very well with the conversation we had back at the top of the year around resolutions. If listeners out there, if you haven't listened to that New Year's resolutions episode at that top of 2026, I would say go back and listen to that, where we were talking about SMART goals. And it'll, that looking at things through that lens will help us to really be able to understand progress, understand where we're going and what we're trying to get to, and give us clearer vision on just how well we're progressing. Will it alleviate that feeling of uneasiness? No, I don't think it will, but it can still be helpful in giving you clarity to see the path.
Absolutely. And I would also add to make sure you're being honest with yourself, right? So we talk about this uneasy feeling, and there may be some things that you need to move out of your life. But also, I think that uneasy feeling could be something nagging at you because maybe you just haven't done the work that you need to do to get to the next phase in your life. There's only so much that can be done without the work that you need to do yourself, right? You have to participate. I mean, this life is full of participation on your part. So be honest with yourself if you are not doing the work or determining if you're not doing the work. And if you're not, if you decide that you're not, then, make that change, make that commitment, set that goal to or create that new habit to uh, get to the next level, to do the work and get to the next level. And as Frankie has mentioned many times, even if you need to grab hold of an accountability partner to help you get to that next level, to get or get a coach. There's a lot of different things that you can try, and maybe it is an experiment. You know, maybe this step is an experiment, and you just try things until you get it right. But the important thing is to make sure that you're paying attention to what your inner feelings are telling you. What uh, your subconscious is telling you, right? You just take some stock into that and identify that something is happening and you need to take an inventory and see what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, we got to put in the work. If we want to make progress, we got to put in the work. We talk about rising on purpose. Rising takes energy. I get a visual of a ladder, and Nuge, you may go 4 or 5 rungs at a time up that ladder while you're rising, and I can only go one. But guess what? we're both still going up. We're both still rising on purpose.
That's
and
right.
we can't overlook the progress that we've made just because we're caught up in comparing it to the progress that we perceive someone else has made.
That's right. And you don't need the whole blueprint, folks. You don't need the whole blueprint. You just need to take an honest step in a forward direction, right? You don't need to have all the answers. You're not going to have all the answers. I don't care what state you're in. You're not going to have all the answers. Just make sure that you are taking good care of yourself, being honest with yourself, and having those moments of reflection. And ask yourself questions about situations that are going on. Take the time, do that work, and then move forward to do the work necessary to get to the level of achievement that you would like.
Well said, sir.
All right, Frankie, I think this has been a really good conversation. Any final thoughts that you want to leave with our audience today?
It's a journey. There are going to be twists and turns. Some parts of it for us are going to be smooth. Some parts are going to be downhill. Some parts are going to be uphill. Some parts might be uphill with icy roads, but that's part of the path. Our journey, our rise is going to ebb and flow. Sometimes we're going to rise faster than others. Sometimes we'll be slow. Sometimes we may just be neutrally buoyant and not rising at all and just holding steady. But in all of that, there's positivity in knowing that we've got a goal, we've made progress, and that we have tools available to help us keep moving along the way.
You're always becoming. You're always becoming. Very good. Very good. Well, Frankie, tell the folks where they can find us, where they can tune into the PSI Effect podcast.
Yes, sir. So for all things PSI Effect Podcast, you should go to our website. This is psipod.com. There you'll find links to all of our episodes and all of the different podcast platforms where you can subscribe, follow, download all of our audio only podcasts. That's for Amazon, that's for Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the podcast platforms. So check it out and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode. You can also find us on YouTube. We post video content on YouTube. Our full episodes are available on YouTube. You can just search for the PSI Effect Podcast or use our handle at This Is PSI Pod. And that is also our handle on social media at This Is PSI Pod for Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and I can mention YouTube. So come on out there. We love hearing from you. Comment, let your friends know about it. We just want to continue to grow and build this community.
Well said. All right. You guys are awesome. You're an awesome audience. We really appreciate you. Just remember that setbacks are temporary and comebacks are legendary. And so until next time, be brave and rise on purpose.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the PSI Effect Podcast. This show doesn't happen without you, and you can connect with us via Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. Visit our website at thisispsipod.com and find us on YouTube and social media at This Is PSI Pod. That's at This Is PSI Pod. Until next time, remember, be brave and rise on purpose.